growing trend that could actually stunt growth here in the United States, as we saw earlier this week with Pfizer and AstraZeneca. When it comes to mergers and acquisitions, more U.S. companies are attempting to relocate their headquarters overseas to slash their tax burdens, because we've now gotten to the point where corporate taxes in America are higher than they are in many countries in Europe.
But this mega merger is shining a spotlight on the issue, with the heat now firmly on Congress to make some changes. So let's turn to Dennis Berman from the Wall Street Journal and Republican Congressman Aaron Schock from Illinois. It is good to have you both with us. And Congressman, I hate to make you stand for Congress here, but you have patently failed to do anything on this front. Time is rapidly running out.
Well, I think Steve Forbes in your earlier segment hit the nail on the head. If the White House was engaged on this and believed that it needed to happen,
what does
and
the White
used
House
a little
have to
bit
do
of
with
its
it, Congressman?
They actually have to endorse corporate tax reform. Dave Camp, the House Ways and Means Committee, House Republicans have had it in our budget the last 4 years. We voted on it and passed it. We laid out a comprehensive proposal for tax reform that allows for repatriation of money, that lowers the corporate rate from 35% to 25%, does all the things we need. But is laying it out in the budget the same thing as passing it? Well, the House of Representatives can do it, but we got to have a Senate and a who's a willing party. This deal with Pfizer, let me tell you, is a case study in what's wrong with our tax code. This company has $49 billion in cash sitting overseas, trapped because of our antiquated worldwide tax system. We're the only industrialized nation in the country, aside from our high rate, that allows for double taxation of foreign earnings. That's got to go, along with the high rate of 35%. Japan just lowered its rate, and we now have the dubious distinction of not just having a worldwide system, but the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Money's liquid. I'm from Illinois. Guess what? My residents, my companies, they're moving to Texas. They're moving to Florida because the rates are lower there and it's more competitive.
Lots of companies have a lot of cash. Apple, obviously, with $130 billion, I believe, or something like that overseas. Dennis Berman, didn't the president in his State of the Union address bring up this topic and at one point or another say he wanted to see corporate tax rates come down?
Well, of course he did. And of course, Congress has said over various years that it wants to make a difference. It hasn't, because it's so dysfunctional. I think the Congressman makes a very good point. The Pfizer deal should be a wake-up call to every member of Congress, both in the House and the Senate. We have basically the creme de la creme of American corporations choosing to renounce its citizenship and head elsewhere. Now, I do think there are some very real criticisms about what companies are doing to get through every single loophole they can, running earnings through Ireland, running earnings through offshore venues, patent revenues, royalties. There's a gamut of tricks conducted by lawyers here on Wall Street that make all this possible. Those have to close as well. And, of course, everyone wants to talk about it in concept that it's a great idea. But when you talk about closing those little loopholes, then all the lobbyists come out and feast.
Is going to get gored is really what we're talking about here. Ron, you seem uncomfortable.
Well, I always seem that way, Tyler. But, you know, the one thing that's kind of interesting, I don't think that companies are abandoning the U.S. If you look at what's happening in reality, manufacturing is coming back to the United States for a lot of competitive and comparative advantage reasons. And don't forget, we may have the highest marginal corporate tax rate in the world. We have one of the lowest effective tax rates in the world for the very reasons that are being described here. So no one really has to leave to dodge paying taxes. They can continue to domicile profits offshore and engage in avoidance that way. So I'm not sure that this is necessarily a wholesale departure of major corporations from the U.S.
I don't think we can say, hey, they can go offshore and that'll be great because we'll still get some benefits. The reality is that it's almost like,
said that, did I?
Well, it's almost as if I married a Canadian and said, hey, I'm a Canadian now, I don't have to pay the U.S. taxes. The standard now is 20% of your shares or more are held by foreign owners. You, like Pfizer, can say, hey, I'm now a UK company and not a U.S.
Congressman, are some of the efforts that we've seen, FATCA, other kinds of things, all aimed at closing these very loopholes so that you can move forward with tax reform?
Exactly. I mean, look, the reason why these companies have to do somersaults and backflips to try and get their rate down, to use every deduction and loophole in the code possible, is because our rate is so high. Let me give you a case in point example on the AstraZeneca-Pfizer deal. AstraZeneca's effective rate based in the UK is 21%. Pfizer's effective rate in the U.S. is 27%. Every percentage point that Pfizer can reduce its rate by saves them $200 million in net profit. So that 6-point spread, if they could re-domicile in the UK, the 6-point spread would save them $1.2 billion in profit. I don't care which shareholder or board of director you're talking to and how pro-American they are. At the end of the day, if you can save $1.2 billion by being in another country, you're going to do it. And by the way, manufacturing may be coming back to the United States, but let's look at these high-tech research jobs that Pfizer employ here in the United States. The average high-tech employee at Pfizer makes $140,000 a year. That's the average employee at Pfizer. So these are companies we need to keep in America. It started in Brooklyn 150 years ago. Can you imagine what the labor unions would be doing if GM or some of their unionized companies were fleeing the states?
Congressman, I know we have to let you go. We're up against your